Hello, everybody, and welcome to Starseed Net Link. And today we have a guest on my channel, and this is Michael Kopf. And he is here to share his story and some of the experiences that he has had. So, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience?
Thank you. And I have to say first, though, it is a privilege being on this show. I got to meet you on your panel, and that was so much fun. So thank you for having me. And so my name is Michael Kopf. I'm a metaphysical paranormal investigator slash podcaster slash learning that I'm in the secret space program. So branching into a whole new field that I was not prepared for. And so slowly getting memories of programs and finding out a lot of unanswered questions growing up are starting to now make sense. And so I'm really surprised that I started one of my series, Writing Through the Unknown, because I had a passion for what was hidden knowledge and thought, I have an opportunity to possibly share this passion with others. And second episode, I had Arkeem on and talking with him, I was like, wait a minute. This is starting to sound familiar and feel familiar. And so I started sharing with him some of my experiences, and he was like, yeah, you were in the programs. Not sure which ones, but you definitely, yeah. And so that started my journey into finding out what is the secret space program, what is, involved, who's doing what, and just a rabbit hole that is kind of an exciting adventure, but at the same time, kind of a rabbit hole that you're like, I don't want to find what I think I'm gonna find at the end of this hole. So trying to keep a positive framework to it.
So, what was some of the first experiences that you started to encounter that sort of led you into becoming like a investigator in this type of phenomenon?
So growing up, I had a lot of experiences I couldn't explain and were different. And I noticed I was different. Like I could see and understand things differently than other people. And one aspect is growing up, there were shadow beings always in the corner of my eye. And I would see them and I thought, oh, we're just playing games with spirits and thought nothing of it. And just thought it was fun and was curious why nobody else could see them. And I could sense like spirits around. I couldn't see them, but I could feel they were around. And so I'd start to look around and everybody just be looking at me like, what are you doing? I'm like, y'all don't feel that? Y'all don't sense something's here? And always had the feeling of being watched. And it just was something I kind of just got used to. And another aspect of what now looking back to that led me to also realize that I was in the programs was one I talked with Arkeem about, and that was, and growing up in elementary school, how we all drew pictures and everybody was like, ooh, ah, over pictures. I would draw a mountain with like three tiers with craft in it, like a military base inside a mountain, no doors. And everybody was like, and they were like, well, you got a vivid imagination. I'm like, I don't know. I've never seen it in a movie. I've never seen it, you know. So where would my imagination come up with this? And
Yeah, it's the same thing when I was in kindergarten and our teacher, like I was in kindergarten, the teacher is like knows that we're still learning our ABCs, but we can at least form some sentences. And instead of writing in English, I would write in scribbles, but I was thought that I was actually like writing in light language. So I just like
Oh, wow.
it looks like a bunch of squibbles to my teacher, but I'm like telepathically communicating through the screen.
You know, I got a lot of respect for that because I've seen the light language and I'm pretty good at picking up languages and being able to kind of understand what I'm looking at and kind of get a general idea. But yeah, I'm with your teacher on that one. I look at the light language and I'm like, that's a what? That means what? No, for some reason I can't retain that one. But yeah, and another thing of growing up was I could heal fast, and so I started having this feeling of like started watching science fiction stuff with my sisters and seeing how the government picks up like ET and, experiments on him. And I'm like, well, I got a healing factor. I don't want to be experimented on. And so I would be like, if I cut my arm and was like, wipe the blood with the Kleenex, I would put it in my pocket until I was able to throw it away in a secure place that I felt like nobody could get a hold of my blood. Or I was afraid to go to the doctors because I was like, man, what if they figure out there's something different about me and I don't get to go home and become a lab experiment? And when I write about that, I like to put in the little excerpt of, little did I know.
So, tracing our steps back here, as a spiritual researcher and you growing up with shadow beings, what is your opinion about them, or what have you discovered about them as an investigator into this type of phenomenon?
So I feel like the shadow beings are a being just like anybody else, it's like an Arcturian or could be Draco, could be, any number of beings. And just like the Dracos and the Palladians and Lyrans, there are good ones, there are bad ones. I was fortunate. I was raised by the good shadow beings because they never hurt me. They never like came when I wasn't aware. And I feel like it was almost like the game they were playing was teaching me how to sense them and understand what I'm seeing because they would always be on the corner of my eye. And the second I turn and look at them, they would disappear. And so it became this game of how close would I let them get before I would turn and go see you. And it's like, and the thing I would equate it to is kind of like in the Native American tribes, the counting coup, where you would tap your enemy on the head and be like, and get away and be like, yeah, I was able to touch him and get away. Look at, how great a warrior I am. And so I feel like that's what they were doing was kind of teaching me how to sense how close they could get before I'd be like, nope, not letting you get that close. Or
Yeah.
if you're in the room, where in the room I could start to sense where they were.
Yeah, it's the same thing with me growing up. Um, I had good experiences with the shadow beings. I always thought that the shadows, like the shadow beings, were not actually shadow beings, but beings disguising themselves as shadows so that they look less scary in a sense, but as like a training mechanism to like, we're here, we're training you how to see us. Um, a lot of the shadow beings helped me get over a lot of my fear, like childhood fears growing up. So I mostly don't really consider them as evil. I just believe that a lot of people really don't understand who or what they are, that then they might not actually be shadows, but beings teaching you how to see beyond. So that lines with a lot of what I have experienced a lot with shadow beings.
I love that. I never thought about it that way, but I think you're right because, I mean, yeah, you see a shadow, and as a paranormal investigator, it's like one of the things that we look for is like, is there a shadow? And it's like, oh, that's so cool. That could be so and so, and we want to learn who it is. But when we go into the spiritual or programming, we're like, oh my God, it's a shadow. We're programmed to go, oh, that's bad. You don't be around them. They are bad news. And it's like, why? What, and so, yeah, now that you point that out, it's like, makes me want to question why do they not want us to be around the shadows? And I kind of wonder if it has to go along with the fact they don't want us to align with our shadow side.
Yeah, and the spiritual community is called mirror work or shadow work. So it could also be like we're seeing the other side of ourselves and we have to learn how to incorporate that in our stuff. Me as a spiritual researcher, I'm still studying about shadow work and see how it correlates to seeing shadow beings because that makes a lot of sense because the first thing that you want to do as your spiritual work is align your chakra systems, ground yourself, but also doing shadow work or what is also known as the dark night of the soul of seeing other aspects of yourself that you never learned about before. So learn the other side of yourself to how to heal yourself as well.
Right, and it's interesting, we're talking about this because on my show, The Energy That Surrounds Us last night with Lala Bright, we were talking about how the shadow is, a part of the duality system program that we've been told is in existence. And we were talking about like in the Matrix how, everything is duality and everyone focuses on one person being the one that's gonna break the system. And I was like, but we don't realize that there's other people assisting the one person, that everybody is needed to take and break the system, and that everyone is equally important. And how, if you look at stuff, things, aren't always what they appear. And then I was like, in the shadows, side, our own shadow sides is not our negative side. It's just a side we've been told not to look at and to fully embrace our hero's journey. We have to embrace and incorporate the shadow side, like you were saying. And I was like, look at Star Wars. Look at Luke Skywalker, the most famous hero's journey. He leaves the Force and can only return when he embraces both sides and says the books are pointless. It's all within you.
So, what are some of the other experiences that you have encountered on your journey of being an investigator?
Well, I was at a abandoned school that somebody was turning into an art studio with a friend, and we were both walking through with the friend who was another investigator that we had just met up with, and we're walking around, and I went into this classroom, and I feel something pull me towards going into this closet area in there. And all of a sudden, I feel the energy try to push me through the floor. And I'm like, guys, I'm a solid object. I'm not going through the floor. You're wasting energy. It's not going to happen. And I just kind of was like, enough, and started to walk back into the classroom. And going towards the hallway. And as I walk in the hallway, my friend is like laughing. He's like, "Oh my God, you just missed it." I was like, "What?" He goes, "A spirit just flicked my hat off my head." And I'm like, my first thought is, man, I get pushed through the floor and you get a hat flick. Why can't I get the hat flick? And so we were like, I was like, man. And so we kind of were like, all right, well, show's over, let's go back and, let's keep doing what we're doing. And all of a sudden we hear this voice giggle. And I turn and I look at my friend and he's looking at me because we're the only two in the hallway at this point, and we're like, "You heard that, right?" And then it's like sounds like his name, and another laugh, and we both go towards the voice, and I go actually onto the balcony seating for the auditorium in this building, and I'm standing there, and right next to me is this spot on the floor that looks really weird. And so I took two digital pictures with it. And as you know, with digital cameras, they are really good at lining up and focusing and taking high quality pictures. None of the pictures I took of the floor turned out. They were all blurred out. You couldn't make out anything on it. And I was like, that was very strange. But my friend never came out on the balcony, and we both went through and we're doing our thing, and then we met up and somebody says, I got a room you guys need to check out. And we're like, okay. So we go to the very top and we're in this big room and there's this little alcove kind of closet area that's got a glass on three sides. And we're like, okay, what's going on? So he walks into it, I walk into it, and we're like, man, the energy is there, and there's like, that expression, it's so thick you could cut it with a knife. Well, this one was so thick, even a knife couldn't penetrate it. It was like you just were overwhelmed. And I was like in there, and I noticed there have been no insects throughout this entire experience. And yet, in this alcove, the windows were almost coated with flies. And I was like, why are they all in here? And then we walk out and we say to somebody, man, the energy is so thick in there and it feels so down. What is going on there? And it's interesting, all the flies are in there. And she goes, well, it's interesting you note that because that's where a student jumped and committed suicide. And I was like, oh, you could have told us before we went in what we're walking into. But it was interesting to me how the bugs seem to gravitate towards that spot and were just there, and how the energy was so different from the rest of the building. It's like, wow. And that moment kind of really made me aware of energy can be so focused to a point that, yeah, it alters everything around it. And so we get to the car, and my friend, because we always would joke online about how we would never run from anything. We'd go check it out. He would go for a pub and get a drink instead. And he puts his arms like this on my car and goes like this and goes, "Thank you for not running." And that kind of sealed our friendship. And yeah, we had a lot of fun experiences, but seeing apparitions and hearing EVP, which is electric voice phenomenon, is something you're never really prepared for. It's like you can watch it online and be like, "Oh, that's really cool," but when you experience it, it is like, yeah, you just go into a state of this can't be real. This is I gotta be making this up, and you start sending it to a lot of people because you're like, uh, no, this can't be. This No way. And everybody will be like, how did you get that? Where'd you get that? Oh my God. And you're like, oh my God, it's real. So cool. It finally came through.
Do you think that a lot of these abandoned buildings serve like a central hub of ghosts, like ghosts that just wandered the planet and then they just find a random building to just hang out?
Somewhat, but I think some of the buildings are near what we call ley lines, which are energy lines. And so even if it's near one line, there's energy coming off of there that we can tap into as well. And so I think they gravitate towards those and it keeps them going and it opens up ability for them to interdimensionally travel or jump timelines to different parallel timelines, or even as much as just allows them to stay stabilized in our world in their form of energy. And that's why when you get certain places where there's like constant activity versus some activity, I would venture to say probably, don't quote me on it, but probably like 60% or more of those spots will be where two ley lines intersect. So it's got like even more strength and energy. And so they like to say, when I was looking at a map, like Stonehenge and Glastonbury and Braine Chateau, the Tour of Magdala, which are all supposed to be highly sacred spots, those are all on ley line intersections. And they're supposed to be where you can tap into magic. So it does make one wonder, if there is magic there, is that why the spirits there are either protecting the land there and stable, and living there still, or able to be around there? And I was talking with Christy Campbell one day about all the legends and myths, and we were talking about how when you're in the programs, you learn time is a loop. It's not a linear straight line, so we can travel into the past real easy. I don't know that I've ever heard of anyone going to the future, but we go in the past and we can alter into other states. And I was saying to her, what if there were people in the programs that went back in time to like the Victorian age and were in wolf altars, and hence the werewolf legend started? Were they those real beings or were those programs where somebody saw what they weren't supposed to see and said, "Oh my God," and created this whole mythology around it? And it's like, we're responsible for that.
Yeah. It's interesting. I've been told that our future is our past and our past is our essentially our present. So we're living in our future past right now. And and that sort of like tracks with the other stories that I've been hearing about with the other SSP where um they can travel back in time, but they can't travel forward in time. And I mostly believe that is a safety feature with Stargate technology or time technology that they got their hands on. I do know that it's a safety mechanism because if you end up going into the future, you can change the correlation of the past, which can ultimately affect the future and stuff. But I have heard that by traveling to the past or to get to the future is that you have to navigate sideways, which is through alternate dimensions or to get to the future.
Right. And we talk about disclosure and shows and everything. I always found it interesting, like the series Stargate SG-1, time traveled, but it was always to the past. And even in the movies, when we watch like Marvel characters, or I don't know that DC really does it, but Marvel deals with time, and they always show them going in the past. And I started thinking about that and going, if we time travel to change something in the past we don't like, we don't necessarily come back the same way we left. So is it worth risking who we are now to go back and erase something?
Yeah. It's um it's really kind of interesting. It's kind of really interesting that you say that though. It also, from what I've learned, that the reason why we can't go into the future is because our future is so unstable as it's not been set in stone yet. So that's the reason why we can only travel back in the past because that's already set in stone.
Right. And I mean, not to go into TV, but there is the BBC, the British people are really good at disclosure. Like they have a whole series that's been going since the 60s called Doctor Who, and it introduces time, relativity, space, dimension, everything in such a way that it's like you're watching this and it's like I'm like I recognize who they're talking about. They don't necessarily look like they're showing them, but it's like I'll be like, yeah, it sounds familiar what they're doing. And it's interesting that when the doctor goes into the future and shows everyone the future, they're like, this is our future. What, this is so amazing, or this is so sad. How can we stop this? And it's like, you can't. And it's like, well, then why are we looking at it? And it's an interest, time itself, when we boil down to it, is a construct and a program. So when we're looking at going and saying we want to be free of programs, we got to look at going, well, what all in our lives are we going to be giving up and leaving the programs and freeing our mind completely because time will cease to exist. We'll become limitless, like can appear all over the world simultaneously. Don't need to, have travel, pay for tickets to travel somewhere. You can just show up, attend an event, leave. And there's a little bit of freedom to that, but there's also a little bit of, I was kind of an aspect of it I never thought of is like, I was watching, ironically, The Flash, and there was a scene, the TV show, where he goes so fast he has to call up his friends and go, "Hey, I'm over here. Can you bring me a change of clothes? I went so fast the fabric burned off of me." And I'm like, that's true. We don't think about, if we move so fast, how are we going to appear? And that's why I wonder if in the programs they knew this, and that was another reason we were given the nanosuits, because it would amend itself in motion.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense that we don't really think about the little tiny little aspects of our experiences, but those little tiny little aspects have a much more deeper purpose into some of your experiences. Like for an example, um your sight, like what you see, what you smell, what you hear, what you feel, can really help a lot of people navigate their experiences and unlock stuff about their experiences just by focusing on those basic, s- our basic five senses and stuff. And sometimes a lot of ETs, and I have noticed this, where they will block your spiritual eye or your eyes so that way you can develop like what you can hear and smell and feel while you're experiencing it, not just through your eyes, but also develop your other sensory abilities as well.
I think that's true because one of the lessons I was told when I started awakening myself in the metaphysics was when you can truly see with eyes unseen, you'll know you've started. And it's like, how do you see with eyes unseen? Your eyes see everything. So how can your eyes not see but see? And it's like I started to realize what they were meaning was like looking at the outside and going, okay, the grass is green. Well, is the grass green? Is there even grass? What are you really looking at? And realizing everything we see is filtered through a program. And so everything we touch, the sensation is filtered through a program. And all these programs, like you're saying, are so minute, we don't give them second thought. We just are like, yeah, our body's processing. And there's a reason we say our body is processing or I'm processing this information is as much as we'd like to think we are pure organics, I think there is aspects of us that is not organic, that is like a computer and is uploading data all the time, processing data, storing data, downloading
That sort of
information.
that sort of is on track with some of the star seeds believe that we are part of the crystal grid network or the um crystal ley lines or the crystal something within our world, and knowing about crystals, it sort of acts like a quantum computer system across this entire planet. So it makes a lot of sense on the reason why a lot of people believe that we live in the Matrix, but we don't actually live in the Matrix. It's just that we live what a lot of starseeds call the crystal grid network, which is recording and analyzing all of this cosmic data that our planet is storing and downloading into us through light codes and light activations that a lot of other starseeds talk about as well.
Right, and it explains why when you go and you're at like say a store where you're looking at stones and crystals and everything and you can pick up one crystal and it's like, oh, that's nice. Or you can pick up another one and go, oh, that's cool how this is doing this, and pick up another one and you're like, there's information in this one. Or pick up another stone and be like, this is a key to something. And it's like your mind will automatically read the crystal and your subconscious, if you're connected enough to it, your soul will go, this is the stone you need. This is the stone you're looking for. Like, this is the key for you. And that's why we get them. And as we grow and we learn, the stone, the information, we may have tapped it out and got everything we needed. And that's why we put it aside or may give it to somebody else and say, this will help you as we ran our course with it. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a sign of you're growing and your path is going in this way and don't need this anymore. Whereas, we always think that once we start down a path where you're forever on that path. And it's like, no, our path is constantly changing, and there is no wrong way on the path. There is no failure on the path. Everything is for a reason. Every choice is for something. And any choice you no longer resonate with, you just simply make another one. You don't have to sit there and go, well, but I said I was going to do this and I'm committed to doing this. And I have to go through this miserable time because I said, and I got to honor my word. Well, your word was to walk the path, not stay in this event.
What is some of the important things that you've learned throughout your experiences that you think that other people should know or learn about?
One big one that to me I think is one of the truly most beneficials is, you talked about the mirror effect, is there's also a second, what I call mirror effect you know, in the universe with each person. And that is, for example, let's say I look at you and I'm like, oh, I love how your energy is so bright, and I love how your like smile lights up the room. What I'm really saying and seeing is, I love my light being so bright. I love how my smile brightens up the room. And that's the mirror effect. What we see in others is reflecting what we're seeing in ourselves. And it's a double-edged sword kind of effect, because as much as what we're seeing and talking about on the positive side is, if I was to say, man, when you said this, that was so wrong, and I can't believe you went there, you're saying that about yourself as well. So even the stuff you don't like in others is stuff you don't like in yourself. And so it's like the ultimate tool to grow, because you're seeing both sides. And when you start to realize what you're seeing in every, relationship and every communication and every experience is what you're seeing in yourself, you start to go, okay, now I don't like this. Well, let me clear it out of myself. When you meet up with that person the next time, it's not going to be the same if you've done the work. And doing the work doesn't mean you're sitting there, going into meditation for 7 hours a day and working on rewriting everything. It's just learning to look at things a different way. And it can take a matter of minutes, it can take hours, it can take seconds, it can take days. It'll take as long as it needs to. And there is no right or wrong amount of time. That's one. And another, I think that's important for people to understand is, when we interact with people and we are in, say, for me, example is, I have a very shy nature. So when I'm in public space that's unfamiliar to me, I will stay in the back and be try to hide myself away until I get comfortable with my surroundings. And it doesn't mean I'm not wanting to be there. It just means I'm, experiencing a little overwhelmed and don't want to like freak out if a bunch of people start rushing me that I don't know. So it's like I go, set myself aside, find my calm center, and when I'm ready, I'll go mingle if I want to. And if I don't, there's nothing wrong with that. And so we have to be authentic to ourselves, and being shy is not a bad thing. But when you let your shyness control you, that's when it becomes the bad thing. And so when I do my podcast shows, I seem really bright and outgoing because I'm challenging myself to go beyond my shyness and make new friends, experience new things. Whereas, if I let my shyness control me, I'd never go on panels. I would never do shows. I would just sit in my room, read or watch shows about stuff that interests me and not share anything, and people miss out from that. We need that interaction actually to help grow and bounce ideas off each other. So my thoughts for everybody in that instance is acknowledge where you are and acknowledge your feelings and look at, are your feelings holding you back and controlling you, or are you just acknowledging you have them and you're still going forward and going through them? That's the true lesson. And that's the true gift, is learning, yeah, we can be afraid of something. We can be, happy about something, sad about something, or we can be shy about something. It doesn't make us less unless we let it determine who we are. I hope that makes sense.
It's sort of like it's sort of like trying to get over and past, I guess, what a lot of people in the Star Trek community call the fear base understanding or fear-based programming or fear-based understanding about stuff. And once you start to get over that fear, you can really start to dive into your experience and feel a whole lot of the world around you that you never experienced before or never seen before, because it's been hidden behind a layer of fear, anxiety, depression, and all that other stuff. But there's a lot more out there once you get over those barriers.
Right. An example would be like firefighters. I mean, they're running into a fire, which theoretically and in actuality could burn them alive to help someone. And you ask them, every one of them, were you afraid going in there? And their answer is yes. But I was more afraid somebody else, may perish in there because I let my fear take over. That's where the heroic and the, insight comes from, is yes, everybody has it. It's what you do with it that determines who you are. Soldiers going into combat, they're scared to death they're not coming back. But at the same time, they're also scared to death of, if I don't go, what's going to happen to my brother or my sister next to me? They're counting on me, so they step up. And that's what we need to learn to do, is to step up even when we're feeling something, is not, or feeling something that's holding us back. Now, I don't mean if you see someone like being attacked on the street and you have zero training, go and interfere. No, don't put yourself in harm's way if you're not going to be an asset. What I'm meaning is, if you're seeing someone in trouble, call someone that can help them. Or, don't just walk by and go, well, I didn't see anything and they'll leave me alone. I'll be okay. It's, that's where the world goes wrong, is we're so programmed to are being afraid of, oh my God, what are they going to do to me if they find out I did this? That we turn a blind eye to a lot of things that we shouldn't. And so that's where I think the world is at today, is we're looking at situations and going, you know, enough is enough. We're not going to turn a blind eye anymore. We are going to stand up. And even if you're just standing up and saying, no, this isn't going to happen, I'm not going to tolerate this, that's enough. You put that energy out there. That frequency has gone out there. That has a huge impact. That's what people, I think, also need to realize is action is not always a verb meaning movement. Action can just be simply sitting at home and saying, enough is enough, and let that energy go out, do its thing. It'll be picked up by those that can take action further, and it'll ricochet and ripple out. And that is equally as powerful as someone walking up and putting a stop to a fight. Words have as much power as action does. The frequency is the same. So that's another thing that I think people need to wake up and realize is we don't have to go into combat to fight a battle. We can sit in our room and just say, you know what? This is wrong. I know I believed this. Now I know the truth. This no longer serves me. I'm not putting any more energy into it. I'm not believing it anymore. And that has a truly huge impact that they cannot even measure.
Well, I just want to say, thank you so much for sharing this information and sharing your experiences and about what you've learned. Is there anything else that you want to give any advice to any people that are going through something like an experience or a phenomenon that they're going through? Is there any type of advice that you want to give to them or any last messages that you want to give out?
Sure. Wow, there's a lot. We'll have to do a part two on that part. Um, I would say for someone going through an experience or phenomenon, if they're feeling overwhelmed and feeling like nobody's out there, take a step back, take a breath, and know. I know people say all the time around the corner, things will get better. You just got to turn that corner. And I know that sounds like just empty words and empty promises, but I can tell you from my own experiences, that corner doesn't always look like a corner. You could meet somebody who just randomly walks up to you and says hello and is reaching out with an energy of kindness. And that can be enough to help jumpstart you out of whatever you're in and bring that hope of what's coming is better and that there is a future worth sticking around for. And so don't always judge and get caught up in a judgment of what you think, what you need looks like, because you may be missing out on several opportunities. And the most famous is that I think it was a comic strip where there was a couple in a flood and their house, got water coming up to the window, and this boat comes up and says, here, let me help you get to shore. No, God's gonna save me. And the water rises, and they go to the second story, and uh, raft comes by, and they're like, "Oh, we can help you. Let's take you to shore." No, God's gonna save me. They go on the roof. The water's up to the roof level, and he brings a helicopter over. They drop a line and say, "Get on. We're gonna take you to safety." No, God said He's gonna save me, and they drown. And they go to the pearly gates, and they go, God, how did you not save me? He goes, I sent you a boat. I sent you a raft. I sent you a helicopter. What more did you want from me? It's because we didn't look at it the way we were. We expected this omnipotent being to come and just lift us up. So the lesson there is don't always judge everything by how it looks. You have to be open to what's there, and you have to trust your instincts. Men and women both have instincts. It's a misnomer. Women are the only ones with intuition. Both have it. And if somebody walking up you get a bad feeling from, don't engage. You know, but the next person that walks up and you have an okay feeling with, talk to them. They may have the answers you need. Just don't buy into, anybody that walks up and says, "Oh, I got the solution for you in this bottle," so to speak, and you become a servant to something that you were never supposed to be a servant of, and you get worse because you didn't trust yourself. You just were so anxious for someone to give you that quote magic pill that was going to make everything better that you just blindly bought into another program, and now you got to figure out how to get out of that to get out and fix what was broken in the first place. And that's the other thing is we're never actually broken. We're just having experiences. So that is something I think we'd probably need another episode to explain how we're not broken and all of that and what that means, because that's a really in-deep process.
I just want to say, thank you so much for showing up, doing this interview, and sharing what you have learned about your experiences. Um, I hope that you find everything that you're looking for through your SSP experiences. Um, that is really, really difficult to navigate, and there's a lot of, I guess you want to say, spooks that you're gonna find out about the SSP and stuff. I did first getting into it. I'm still learning, learning about it as well. But I just want to say thank you so much for sharing this knowledge. Is there any place that people can reach out to you if they want to talk to you? Is there anything that you want to advertise, like your podcast or YouTube channel or anything like that for the audience?
Sure, but really quick, I want to mention, as you were saying with navigating the SSP, one thing I think that's would be helpful for everyone is I was talking with Brian Zhang actually, I think it was yesterday or the day before, about something, and I told him, I said, when I first started getting into this, everybody was just sharing how they had full memory recall, and I was like, I don't have any. And I was stressing myself trying to get memory and forcing memory to come back and going through different things to find out how to force these doors to unlock. And Brian simply looked at me and goes, "Don't stop forcing it. There are people that have full recall. There are people that have partial recall. There are people that have no recall. Let it unfold the way it's meant to unfold. It can take a year, it can take a few months. Don't force it." And that was like, I had just started giving up forcing it. So it was perfect time to hear that validation of, yeah, you're doing the right thing by stepping back and just letting it unfold in its own time. And so I wanted to share that because I'm sure there are other people out there that are like, I want this, I want that, like these people have. Why don't I have? And start getting, like worked up of why and wondering what's wrong with me that I don't have that. And so the bottom line is nothing. And I'll give you my link tree access that has all my links in it. And then real quick, I'll say on Tuesday nights, I have a podcast show for the paranormal, which is anything unexplained in my viewpoint. I discuss It's called The Energy That Surrounds Us. It's at 9 p.m. Central Time. I have Wednesday nights is my series, Writing Through the Unknown, which is esoteric, disclosure, secret space program type information. And then Thursday afternoons, twice a month, is my paranormal show with a friend, Kel Ridley in the UK. And we talk about paranormal and conspiracy type stuff on that show. And that's at 3 p.m. Central Time. And then Thursday nights, I now am a part of the Beast System with Emily Men's House. And that is like political conspiracy theory type show. And so I'm starting to branch out there and put myself out there more. And I'll be emceeing at the Full Disclosure Now conference this coming July. So I'm
Yeah.
appreciative to Brian for that opportunity. And all the links to my shows where you can watch them are on my link tree because I started noticing as I work with people's bios that all the links can become overwhelming and daunting, that it's like really nice to have one simple link that contains everything.
So yeah, yeah, thank you so much. I hope everybody can tune into that. I do also have the link to the full disclosure now in my community thread if anybody wants to still go buy tickets and still they do also have live streaming. So if you can't physically go, they do have the live stream for people who want to buy the live stream tickets. But I can't wait to see you
Yeah.
at the Full Disclosure Now conference in July. I think it's in June. June,
Nope,
July,
it's in July.
July. Yeah. Can't wait to see you in July.
Yeah, and talking with Brian, I might actually be utilizing my podcasting abilities and bringing my microphone and laptop and sit there and do interviews while the conference is going on or breaks and talking with people. So you never know, you could end up on one of my shows.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your story, sharing what you have learned. And hopefully everybody can go ahead and check out some of your podcasts.
Yes, thank you. And if ever you need a guest, let me know. I'll be happy to come back.
Yeah, thank you so much.